I saw them joining a few minutes ago.
Oh, Mr. Richard.
Jacob, nice to meet you.
Hi, I'm Jane. Nice to meet you. Yeah. Hi.
Gary, here, I'm assuming you're all homeowners.
We are, yes.
Okay, super.
Yes.
Yeah.
Fantastic. So this is one of the first times we're doing the annual meeting. We're going back to how the original charter was. They were just doing their smart. So now you're seeing a short annual meeting, very brief, just for all you need to say, and then just gonna switch straight over to the Q2 meeting.
Okay, all right. I know there's a few more people coming, but.
Hopefully so. Hopefully so. Yeah. Charles.
Hey, everyone.
Hi.
We're gonna give it probably a minute or two more, then maybe a few more joining.
Jacob and team, I'm going to be here just on mute. So if you need me, just yell Charles.
Okay. Sounds good.
And I'll be listening in, obviously. So
Yeah.
Copy someone.
This sounds like someone tried to get into the meeting.
That's called.
Good morning.
Good morning, Carl.
Morning, Carl.
Morning, guys. How are you?
Like you.
Like one more minute, Rose, and then we can start.
Rose, did you get any information from Brian about trying to get back on the committee? Because I guess he didn't realize he needed to fill out.
Yeah,
the
he sent me an email. I will send it to him.
Okay,
Okay, yeah, he sent me an email.
because we're still short technically one person then, right? Because we need
Yes.
3 total to make any sort of,
Yes,
Well-
sir.
vote on anything or,
Yes.
okay. And we can add members essentially whenever, they just have to be checked off by the board.
The deadline was on 4/21 today. We
Okay.
should select, yes, it will be today and then next year. It's here.
Well, then in that case, that means we can't essentially vote on anything this year,
Yes, sir.
which,
But we will do it informative so you can know where the numbers are more or less and, just an
okay.
informative meeting, okay?
Charles,
Hey.
hey, how are you?
good.
Okay, so seeing as that we're in somewhat of a little bit of a conundrum here, that now we only have one member, which essentially it should be 2, because Brian just, I guess, missed filling out his form for this year, and we won't be voting on anything. Is there any sort of rulings in the books that basically allow us to get a new member on here so we can essentially have a quorum?
So my understanding is technically you all have to do the annual meeting, which this is.
Correct.
And then Jacob, if there's not enough of a committee to form the minimum of 3,
Right.
is there any after the fact I don't think there is. I know in the prior world, the board could just go in and add folks that showed interest, but we'd
Correct.
still have to
So-
have a minimum of 3.
Just out of the part of meet, or out of the process of meeting formality, let's start the meeting,
okay.
and then this is the only real conversation of the annual meeting, so we can get straight into it.
Perfect.
But it is 10:05 on Monday, June 23rd. This is our South Village Townhomes Annual Meeting of 2025. First, we'll verify that this meeting was properly noticed. Rose, was this meeting properly noticed?
It was.
Okay. So in that sense, we will call the meeting to order. And now, as looking at our service area committee members, during the open period for applications, we did only receive one application, and that's from Mr. Fourier, Carl on the line here. With that, your committee is a 3 to 5 seat committee, so with the lacking quorum of 3 applicants, meaning that there's less than 3, it does disband the committee until it is till you have enough members. So as Rose has pointed out, the application for the annual has closed. You can still at any point have more individuals apply to be on the committee, so that way it can be reestablished. You
Okay.
would need at least 3 to reestablish it, and then you
Correct.
could fill the seats up to 5 this year.
Right. Same thing. Basically, again, like I was saying. So at this point, Brian will be number 2. It should be number 2 to get back on. How does that work for getting them approved to officially be on the committee again, being that we're past the deadline?
We would need at least 2 more applications, or we
Right.
can't go with just 1, we would need 2. But in
Right.
that sense, we would just have to take it to the next board meeting, and it could even be a board workshop, just as far as the sensitivity would go for getting it done. And then, once the board approves the additional committee members, then it we can have that committee reestablished.
Okay.
And
Perfect.
we can do that because my understanding was the annual meeting was the place where we could do that. If the board can do it, then fine, post-annual meeting. I just want to make sure that's,
In principle, yes, it should be done during the annual meeting. So in this sense, how the annual meeting is ran is we would review the applications, and as there's only one application, it means that at this point, it disbands the committee as a whole because there's not enough members to make a committee.
Can I put a pause real quick on this then? I see we have some folks on the back there. I assume these are other fellow townhome members of our service area committee. If anybody out there wants to be a member, we can go ahead and get this thing locked up here right now, I assume, correct? Then, being that we're at the annual meeting and all we need is applications? I'm asking Jacob, that would technically fall under.
Well, think about it. You won't be under pressure.
If you are interested,
Hey, what better time than ever is to
Come on,
get
Gary.
anybody there
Come on,
who
Gary.
wants to know.
if you are interested,
I
just
see
send
you out there, Gary. Come on.
town hall with your interest, so we can get the application sent to you, so you can have the application filled out. Once we have enough applications in to make a quorum of a committee, then it will go to the board, as long as it's properly noticed on a board meeting, and they'll ratify that, and that will reinstate that committee for the South Village Townhomes. But as it stands now, there is, with the rollover of a new or annual meeting today, the former committee is disbanded and then a new committee takes place. From this sense, there isn't one. We do have several service areas that operate without a committee, so that's fully been managed by the service area management with input from the service area or from the service areas themselves. You can always inform the board that the Crow board is the overall board for all service areas. If you have any concerns or items like that as well.
And for everybody that's there, from being that I've been on the committee, I can tell you that our input is suggestion only. We don't have the final say in what gets done. As it's been said multiple times, we're not the end all be all. The board is the one who does that, as well as management. We just offer, when these things come up, what we suggest or what we feel So I just want that clearly stated. Also, is that we've been designated as a advisory role, not the decisionary role.
So to be clear, we've only got two homeowners on the townhome forum for the committee, or it's completely gone because there's only two, not enough.
So every year at the annual meeting,
Yeah,
the former committee is, you could say, disbanded, and the reappointment of a committee is made
Right.
based on application.
yeah,
There was only one application in, which means that you need at least 3 applications to reinstate that
right,
committee.
fair, okay.
And just to verify, it can only be homeowners, correct? It cannot be anyone who is renting or,
That is correct.
okay. Okay, so, well, at least for everybody that's there, they have the opportunity to put an application in, so we can try and apparently get the council committee put back on the books here. So I guess, I don't know, where does this take us now? Because this is unprecedented. Since we've had the committee involved, we've always had the involvement, and at this point now, we don't, so.
So at this point, it would be, at this point, we will be just adjourning the annual meeting and moving into a Q2 service area quarterly meeting.
Okay.
As the other items on your annual meeting would include the introduction of the volunteers and then a selection of the committee chair and then adjournment of the meeting.
Okay.
And,
But in
and
that
just
case,
so- and
this
just
is
for-
also, go ahead, Charles.
Sorry, and so again, just to make sure we're all on the same page, so committee's disbanding just for purposes of this meeting. However, Carl, it sounds like you're gonna have the additional applicants send their applications, and then we'll effectively reactivate the committee at
Yeah.
seemingly when, okay, just want to make sure. Okay.
And then Jacob, do I need to refile an application or?
No,
Not, you
Okay.
do not, as you've already submitted an application for the 2025, 2026 service area committee.
Perfect.
Great question, though. But yeah, this is, like I said, you're actually of all of them this week. This is the first annual meeting. And this is part of the purpose of it. While it is disbanding and it's, as it stands currently from last year, it's to put on a record in an open room for members of your association as well to understand where it stands, and now to shine the light on if there is interest, it still can be re-ratified.
Okay.
Okay. So with that, we will adjourn at 10:12, the South Village service area, South Village Townhome Service Area meeting, and we can start the Q2 service area meeting. Rose, before we dive into the financials, as I know that's one of the main things that we're wanting to cover, is there anything else that we want to pick up or reflect on? Or even Carl, that we wanted to talk on, as like a carryover from the last quarterly meeting?
well, right now, the main project that they have is the roofing. And, we have already, the board has already approved for the engineers to start the inspection of the, townhomes for the roofing. And also they will also help with, getting some bids from different companies. That was recently approved, so we will, now talk to the engineering company and get some dates and send out to the community so they can know that's happening.
Thank you, Rose. So that is, I'd say, one of the largest things right now that we're looking at with the South Village Townhomes is in 2025, the reserve study had slated a roof replacement for this year. We'll dive into this in a minute with Ray, our finance manager. If it were to be completed this year, it's looking like there's not enough funds in the reserve fund to cover the project. However, we're looking at still doing the project, or at least starting it towards the very end of this year, or making it part of first quarter of next year. For a couple of reasons. One, from advisement of the service area committee prior, was to try not to do a project like this in the middle of the summer. It has been notated that there have been multiple roof repairs and small cells needed in the South Village Townhome, showing that this full replacement is precedent and needed. And as Rose just mentioned, with advisement of the Service Area Committee at the Q1 meeting, we've moved ahead to start the process with the engineer firm to write a scope of work for a roof replacement. So that'll provide us, so every time we do a roof replacement, we bring out a structural or an engineer to go evaluate the roof to see what needs involved inside that roof replacement project. And then they'll write that scope of work, and that's then when we write the RFP to bid out.
Why so soon? Am I allowed to ask that question? Why so soon? 'Cause
They were
obviously-
based in 2017.
Yeah,
It's an advisement with it's a great question. So the reserve study is done by a third-party firm. It's a national firm, and they come out every 3 years and do a full assessment of our 14 service areas and all of CROA assets. In that, they'll write out a 30-year plan of expected expenditures, and that plan is what guides the spending from your reserve fund. And such, we can't pull money from your reserve fund from anything not outlined in that reserve study. The roof is replaced do you have the reserve study pulled up?
I thought it was every 10 years, that's why I'm
Because
really,
it'll be 8 years when it goes to be replaced.
yeah.
Why isn't it 30-year roofs?
There's those.
Yeah, it's
I get fifties with.
So yes, the in Florida, they would must.
Move because of the volume.
So the roofing shingles
You
will
will
go through warranty
It's on
if they
2025.
wear too fast.
That's what I
And then the
mean, that's
roofer
what
is supposed to submit those roofing shingles to the warranty company
yeah.
to receive. a
Yes, so
cost. And somebody gets money that hasn't been able to pay.
Well,
They don't do that, but they should be.
the useful life range from the reserve study has it at every 12 to 18 years, with the recommendation to shorten it in future reserves to every 10 years based on insurance premiums.
There's a change in the law on insurance.
Pardon?
There's a change in law on insurance.
Mhm.
If you get a certification on the roof, the insurance company cannot deny you insurance coverage. As long as there's 5 years more left on the roof and it's in good working order. That law was passed 2 years ago. Okay, I'm an insurance adjuster, so I know.
So still, that being said, if we're looking at doing at the roof, there's, the quote for the engineer has been approved, so they're gonna be starting that now, which will write out the scale of what needs to be replaced. And if it's something that could be prolonged, which would be a good case for your reserve fund, we'll know that information from the professional, engineer. Thank you.
I thought we had some kind of warranty if it was only put on in 2017 or 2018.
2017 was put on before Irma,
Okay,
because whenever Irma came through, we had all the leaks.
yeah. Well, so I mean, I still have a query because obviously the last 2 years, our fees have gone up with the view of we have a roof coming. And I've always questioned, why so soon? Why are we trying to do why are we trying to do this so quickly? And I don't understand why we're trying to replace the roof at 8-year factor instead of the 10 plus and have warranty as well. Like, where do those people come in that put the roof on? That, haven't
They
fulfilled.
have faulty job. That's why we had a separate.
And there was a settlement on that, correct? Yeah.
So where does those funds go? Because obviously we've had to increase our output. So where's the refund from the shoddy job that you're saying someone did?
It will go back into your accounts. 2 years ago?
Yeah, 2 years
So
ago.
then-
I called. Yes, 2 years ago.
Yeah, it was a few years back.
You go about 30 and have run, doesn't make sense.
No, it doesn't.
Call
I'm
me
sorry,
since.
guys. It's kind of hard to hear everybody in the background there.
Did you have a question, or were you trying to understand something in the room?
No. Rose had kicked back, and I want to say it was about 2 years ago that we had gotten the settlement money from the lawsuit from us with the roofer that did the absolute crap job that they did and dealt with. And we've all been, I'm sure most folks in the room there had the similar problems that dealt with that roof, and we've been patching it ever since then. But
Yeah,
it
that
didn't, it wasn't enough to cover a new roof job. That money that was gotten was split between 3 service areas from what I can remember, and it was basically
Yes.
equally given on a per unit basis. And we have one of the bigger service areas out there in Celebration, so we got a bulk of the money, but it was only I want to say it was 200 and something $1,000 if I
Yes,
remember correctly.
yes.
So it was, I mean, not enough to even cover one building.
And we're looking at still doing the roof in accordance to the reserve study instead of prolonging it, as we're already at about $5,000 of unbudgeted roof repairs this year. So with the amount of roof repairs being necessitated, looking into doing the roof as it's recommended is why we're looking into doing that.
So who do you go to for the roof? Because clearly whoever made that decision in 2017 didn't make a good decision as to who to use. So who's making the decision of what clutch of people you go to?
So when we receive a scope of work back from the engineer, then we will write an RFP. That RFP gets posted on the community website. So for anyone as well, if, let's say a reputable roofer, you can refer them to the RFP so they can provide a bid. We require at least 3 bids back to present the project to the board. And then with that, if there's a committee sitting, they're reviewed with the committee as well. The bids are open with them so they can review them. And so it's typically then presented to the board with a committee recommendation and a management recommendation. And then the board would approve that chosen vendor, and then we start the project with them.
Are we gonna get the same type of roof, or, I see metal roofs around town and, I'm just something that is better than what we have.
Your reserve studies are typically written for light to light roof, so it's only funded for the same style of roofing that goes there. If it's something that you want to switch to a better style or a better roof, if it was at a higher cost, that would need to be paid for typically out of your operating excess, or out of your operating fund if it's not allotted in your reserves, unless you had a surplus in your reserves or you're well funded. In that case, that could be looked at changing the scope. But typically, anything out of the reserves can only be funded for a like to like. Anything outside of that like to like would have to come from different funding.
So the question on that, the money that got back for the shoddy work, was that put away for a new roof, or was it just absorbed into the day-to-day running and the money's now gone?
Reserves, right?
Put in for a new roof.
So that was put in your reserve fund, which can be used only for your roof, your paint, a small amount of landscape replacements, fences, gutters, and railings. That's it.
And at the suggestion of the committee, we said we wanted that money put away to stay for the roof, so we wouldn't be
Exactly. And yet we've had
abused later on.
$200 a month increase in the last 18 months. So, yeah, okay.
So when you guys, just a question, when you guys do these roofs, who is in charge of making sure that they're like overseeing the work being done and the inspections being done properly? Such as the flashing being replaced and pointed the right direction so that water doesn't infiltrate the home and rot the entire inside. And then we have that issue because that's what we're dealing with right now.
Since those issues that happened, some of the previous roofings, every time we do a sign off, we bring the same engineer that writes the scope of work, which is a completely third-party engineering firm, not at all connected with the roofing company. So it's not like, oh, we're having the roofing company's project manager sign off. We bring this third party firm back in. This is Karen's Engineering, and then they go up and assess the job and do it and give a sign off before any payment or final payment is ready.
And Jacob, are we confirming that this engineer has no stake in any roofing company that we're going to hire? Because that's part of the problem that happened with the previous, was that
Yeah,
that
I think she was
engineer had
yes.
was
Yeah,
in bed with the roofing company from another state that ended up drawing down on going, oh, don't worry, we're going to get this taken care of. And meanwhile,
Yeah,
lo
it
and
needs to
behold,
be
nobody-
changed.
Yes.
Okay, perfect. I just want to make Just making.
No,
sure.
yeah, we do not
Yeah.
want to be, we do not want to put the community in the same situation as the past cycle. Now, so that going through a bit on that, we will be we are starting to build next year's budgets out for CROA and all of the service areas. We've developed the first draft of CROA has been given to the Finance Committee for review, and now they're going to have, I think, next week, I think it's the 1st of July, the first budget workshop for CROA. Getting that set has helped us be able to start where we're looking at with the service area budgets, and we will be having a service area budget workshop with each of the service areas as well. But we do have, it's planned to be scheduled at the end of July. We will be going over some of the finances now in this meeting as it pertains to the reserves. Do you want to present, Ray? Yeah. One of the main reasons we wanted to do this exercise was looking at the balance in the reserve versus what it's projected to be funded at for this year, and then what our large expenditures in the future years are going to be.
I'm sure you guys can see the screen from there, right?
I'm gonna just pause you right there just for a quick second and go over this a bit as they're looking at this, so that way they can a bit understand what we're going into here. So if you have one of these in front of you, what this is showing right now is the South Village, your detailed balance sheet as of the end of last month. So it's going to currently show that top line all the way to your, actually, we're going to start at the top there. So you're seeing your operating funds at $7,521. Your replacement, which is your reserve fund, is being at $784,000. In accounts, we have a bit sitting in accounts receivable. That should help out some as well. But something that is a bit of a concern is the interfund asset liabilities. What the interfund asset liabilities is, it's all deferred payments to your reserve. So that's showing that there's been in months that there is not been enough in the operating to be able to fund the like your operating expenses. Then in that case, the monthly allotment that gets transferred over to your reserve to fund it on its annual basis gets deferred. So you have a current deferment of about $101,000. So that means that they've been unable to make those contributions into the reserve because of not enough money sitting in the operating account. As you see, we're about that $7,000 right now in operating, which is it's cutting enough to be able to fund the monthly operation. But when we hit things like this, if we flip over to the other side of this, and we jump down to right above where it says total repairs and maintenance in bold on the left, you'll see the roof repairs line. And on roof repairs line, if we jump to those middle sections, it's going to be this year to date. We've spent $4,900. Budgeted in roof repairs this year was $0. So where does that difference come out of? That has to come out of that operating account, which is sitting at very tight budgets or tight limits right now. So with that, I just wanted to give a little overview of the document you're looking at, as what Ray's about to present is a bit different. You're able to zoom in.
Yeah.
So Ray Purvis is our finance manager here at Town Hall over the CROA, Kanoa, CJC, and service area accounts.
Yeah. If you guys don't mind, I'm gonna stand up and just point what I'm looking at. So I don't know if you guys have seen the reserve study. These numbers are gonna go into the reserve study. For 2025, based on the reserve study, these are their recommendations. They're saying that we should start 2025 with $745,000 in our reserve account. And we started 2025 with an actual cash balance of $731,000. So already at the beginning of the year, we were running at a deficit. So per the reserve study, we were supposed to replace the roof this year, which the estimate is gonna be $857,000. If we were to start the project this year, we wouldn't have at the end of the year enough cash to cover 100% of expenses. That's why Jake was mentioning that if we phased out the project, we might start at the end of the year and we cover some of the expenses next year. With the allocation that we're anticipating for next year, we should be able to cover 100%. Currently, we have a healthy cash balance in the reserve study. The only issue is that we have the roof replacements. If we don't do that, we're gonna be fine. So just so you have an idea, for 2025 reserve study, they were recommending for us to allocate for the year from the operating fund to the reserve fund, a total of $228,000. This is coming from the monthly assessment dues that you pay. On the budget, because we didn't want to increase the assessments by that much, we only budgeted to allocate $153,000, which is a 33% decrease or 30% lower than what was recommended on the research study. Currently, and as Jacob was explaining, this monthly transfer from the operating to the reserve fund, they are done automatically. The system automatically goes into the bank account and pulls the funds to the reserve account. Now, because this transfer is automatic, if we need to transfer $10,000 and we only have, let's say, $12,000 in the operating side, we need to transfer $10,000. If we had set up a minimum balance for that operating account of $5,000, let's say, the transfer is not gonna be able to pull the full $10,000. It's gonna pull the difference, $7,000, to make sure that we met the minimum balance required from the operating side. And that's being created a deficit comparing what we're supposed to be allocating and actually transferring cash to our cash accounts versus the allocation. So currently year to date, we have allocated $64,000 in the assessment account, but we have deferred so far close to $11,000. Basically, $2,000 now. We haven't been transferring that cash from operating to reserve because we don't have enough funds. So we have basically allocating we have actually cash transfer instead of 64,000, we have transferred close to $50+ thousand. So we haven't this is what we have in the allocation account, but in the cash account, we have only moved actually like $52,000. Based on that, we're saying we're not gonna be able to meet what we had in the budget that we were gonna transfer $153,000. We're probably gonna end up closer to transferring this number, $126,000 in cash. And then we're gonna be responsible to be able to, at some point, transfer the difference. Those $27,000 that we haven't been able to transfer, we need to make sure that that happens eventually once the cash in the operating account is healthy enough for us to do that. Now, right here. Okay. So what you guys are seeing here is the recommendations from the reserve study. So from 2026, we should have a cash balance at the beginning of the year of $128,000. But this study is assuming that we already did the roof repairs in 2025. So because actually currently we haven't done that so far in 2026, if we were to push the roof repair for 2026, we will start 2026 with a balance of $858,000. And to cover the deficit that we had a recommendation of 200-something thousand for us to allocate in 2025, and we actually only going to be allocating 153,000. We are doing the reverse for 2026. The reserve study is recommended for us to allocate $107,000, but our initial recommendation is for us to allocate $125,000 to start covering that deficit that we have from the reserve study versus what we currently have in our cash accounts. With these $125,000, we're gonna have enough cash in our bank account for us to cover the roof repairs and the additional expenses that per the reserve study, we should be able to, the other projects that we should see coming in for 2026 as well. And that's gonna end the 2026 year with an ending cash balance of $110,000, which is still gonna be under what the reserve study estimated for the end of 2026, which is gonna be $223,000, and we're gonna be at $110,000. Now, even though we're running out of deficit all the way to 2029, in 2028, we have a big project as well. We're estimating that we're gonna be spending $354,000. If that's true, then for 2026, for us to be able to have enough cash for 2028 to be able to cover for all of this, then we might need to increase from $125,000 for 2026 to $150,000 for 2027 for us to have enough cash for 2028 projects. We'll end up at $55,000 in 2028, and then we go from there, not increasing the reserve allocations, and we're gonna have enough money to cover all the projects at least until 2029. And if you notice here, the deficit versus what we have in the reserve study versus what we have in our capital should be decreasing over the years until we're able to actually catch up.
Thank you, Ray.
Yeah, any questions? I know I was wrapping there.
I mean, there's lots of questions. That's probably the reason why we're here, because it always seems to be that we run at these numbers that we say, let's get the money from the homeowners instead of actively, maybe you do, maybe you don't, but it looks like you don't, actively look to reduce the costs that we're paying to contractors rather than just saying, let's stick with them, they're putting the prices up and let's go after the owners. So that's probably why we're here, because all we see is give us money, give us money, give us money. And the standard's going down and down and down, and these figures are going up and up and up. And you're like, why are we paying all this money for worse standards than we had before?
Yeah.
So,
And that's why I made the notation at the beginning that we're going new reserve study, these numbers might change completely. Maybe they do a reassessment of how's the community current situation at that moment. And they'll say, you know what, we might be able to push this cost for another 1 or 2 years.
Can you explain to me what the study is and who does that and how often? Because I don't follow that. So.
Yeah, so you want to hear the actual share the reserve study?
Oh.
Jacob, I'm sorry if somebody said it, but what was the expenditure for 2028, 2020, whatever that large expenditure was in the budget?
Painting,
Eight.
building painting.
Painting, okay.
Do you have a vendor selected for that?
No, so when the building painting will go exactly like your roof project. So in 2028, we'll bring out an engineer to write we'll have the scope written of the paint job to see what needs to be done. So typically, paint projects, we're able to see better numbers than are projected in the reserve study. Because paint projects, most of the time, budget for a full replacement of shutters. Where you typically don't need, exactly, so typically you won't need that. And so we don't, if there's like shutters, and I think even yours, this one has railing, a
Yeah.
fair amount of money in railing replacements, which you're not gonna need railing replacements, and you're probably not gonna need new shutters. You may need 6, but you won't need a full, a full community's worth of those. So in those senses, that $800,000 project in 2028, or what, I think $300,000 will most likely, when it comes to fruition, be substantially cheaper. And in that sense, what happens with the difference? It stays in your reserves to help it become a well-funded, or right now, we're seeing a bit of a deficit in it.
Deficit versus what the reserve study has, but it doesn't mean that you don't have a good cash standing there. The only issue that we have per their study, we're supposed to replace the roof. If we don't have that, you guys are gonna have a lot of cash compared to a lot of other communities inside Celebration. So it's not a bad thing. And as Jacob mentions, yes, I'm putting here the $354,000, but it doesn't necessarily mean that we need to spend that amount of money. That's just the estimate.
So I do have a question about that study. When they come in and do the study, do they actually go into people's yards to like look at their breezeways? And the reason I'm asking this is because when they painted our breezeway, whatever paint they used did not work, and the paint is literally peeling off in sheets on the ground of our breezeway. So in order to fix that issue, they would have to remove the paint that's underneath it and then paint again, because if you paint over top of what's peeling off in sheets, the new paint's just gonna peel off too.
So that that we typically do keep in mind whenever we are writing the scopes, because every surface area has something that's a bit different than a standard paint job, right? Like, we have another surface area that the exterior walls on their next paint job are gonna need a lot of rebuilding, not just painting. Or if we know in yours, it's, you know, in your service area that it has an issue with the multiple layers of paint on porches and porches are
So it's
gonna
the
need
breezeway,
stripped
so it's
off.
in the back, but our front porch is okay. It's just the breezeway is just peeling off in sheets.
Those type of things can be addressed in that scope of work. It's not just gonna be, it doesn't always have to be a standard blank plate.
Okay.
It can be customized at the time, and that's why in this roof project, it's not just going out to say, we need a new roof, let's get quotes. We bring someone, you know, we make sure we write that scope of work specific to what needs to be done.
Okay.
And if elements can be saved or reused and not needing to be replaced, then those are included in the recommendation, the recommended project. The reserve study looks like this document I have up here. So they're done. This is completed by the national company Reserve Advisors. They were on site in August of last year. We had 3 individuals. One was on townhomes for 15 days. So on site here, 15 days, only looking at the service areas. The other individuals were looking at the CROA assets, writing their multi-page reserve study. And so this is where there's 2 pages, I'm gonna say 2 studies in your reserves. There's the funding plan and the expenditures. So what I've pulled up here, and I will zoom in, is a funding plan. So when Ray's referencing where our money is and where your money should be, it's referencing this document here, which was created by that account. So this was created in fall of last year. And so right now we're looking at this column here in 2025. As Ray did point out, compared to other service areas, your reserve account has a lot of money in it, right? We are at that 700,000, but we know that we have a roofing project that's going to drain most of that money. But that's, so when we look at, you do have funding at the moment. Now, some item that we are often starting to really dive into here. So actually, let me take a minute and step back. So this is the expected balance at the beginning of the year and your contribution that year. 2027, you're expected entering the year at 745. As Ray pointed out, you entered the year at around, what was that number? 731. So you entered about where we should, but we knew when 2025's budget was written, we knew that as this year developed on, you would start to create a larger deficit, because when this study came out, it had you making a contribution in 2025 at 230,000. Your contribution in 2024 in your budget was closer to 50,000. That's why on your 2025 when the assessments came out, it came out with an almost 20% increase for your service area, because all of that difference of money was going into your reserve. So your budget was written out at 153,000. So your budget was written to put as much money into your reserves as we could, while an association board can only raise a due up to 20%. Anything outside of that would take a vote of the service area, or it would necessitate a special assessment, that the board can act on a special assessment. But of course, management and the board and everyone involved tries everything you can do to not create a special assessment for the homeowners. Because a special assessment is a one-time payment of X amount, and it can be whatever amount is needed for that specific situation. And that's why we use a reserve study, because we want to make sure we keep funding here. So that way, when a roof project comes and you need, let's say you're in dire need of that roof project and it's $700,000 and you only have 500,000. What happens to the other $300,000? It needs to be made up immediately with a special assessment. That is a huge burden, one-time charge on homeowners. That's when we go through our budgeting cycles, when we're looking at our funding plans, everything we do is to prevent that. Worst case scenario in this situation, or the worst case scenario in a reserve funding plan, is we budget accordingly to it. And then in 2028, when that project comes and we expect to spend 350,000, you only need to spend 200,000. That difference of that savings, we'll say, stays in your association, stays in your reserve, doesn't get moved anywhere. It cannot be spent on anything that is not an outlined reserve expenditure. The one thing that is a little earmark that we keep caution on is when these studies are written by the reserve advisors, they're expecting that all of the funds sitting in your reserve account are making 2.7% interest. Which provides you an annual earnings on interest that they expect is being placed in your reserve account as well to help them. The structure with this service area on any investments, right now the investment income is being put into the operating account to help fund the operating account. It's done like that for two ways. One, we do that on the CRO amount, the board, because if it's put into the operating account, it can be used to help in your operating deficits or needs, but it can also then be moved to reserves. If you have a very well-funded operating account, you can move money into reserves at any time. You cannot move money out of your reserves unless it's one of those unless it's for an exact project outlined in the reserve. So in that case, if next month comes up and there's not enough funding in your operating account, you can't say, oh, we'll just take it from the reserves because we have lots of money there. They're set up that you legally can't do that for an extended amount of time. So that's kind of what this is here. So this is the main sheet Ray's looking at when he's looking at how do we make the budget work. And this is when we saw in 2028, when he sees the expenditures down here, this line is showing that 850,000 this year. It's recommending a lower contribution next year. This one, I think, is penciled in around the same contribution you are this year at 125. So actually a bit lower than this year's in a rough draft of what we're looking at. So in that sense, we're hoping you'd stay it's looking like you'll stay at a flat next year at the very early levels of the budget building process. You're looking at staying at a roughly level shape, but with that said, it is showing that we will be seeing a deficit continue, but a shrinking deficit on that. A quick dive while we're here on what makes this year, this expected expenditures. So right here, you're seeing, 850,000 this year. We know a large amount of this is going to be moved to next year as it's the roofing project. Then you have 17,000, 4,000, and then a large amount. Where those numbers are, what that expected amount is always in our expenditure sheet. This expenditure sheet is more what your service area team is using on a day-to-day basis when it comes into play with projects. So here you're going to see everything that's outlined that is covered in your reserve and its expected time to be replaced. Everything from small sidewalk repairs, fencing, gutters. These are the sidewalks I would say, meaning more your paths. The main sidewalk along the easement is part of CDD, but from that sidewalk to the front doors, that's owned by your associations or any replacement or repairs to that sidewalk. The fencing, gutters, irrigation systems. There's a line for landscape improvements. That would be large overhauls of landscaping, railings, roofs, shutters, soffits, and paint. So this is where we get those numbers. They provide here the average lifespan of the useful life for these systems, and then how many years is left remaining. And then that's going to get you what the expected expenditures each year is. So in 2025, again, that Most of this is gonna be moved back 1 year, but it has about $131,000 in gutters, $130,000 for project management of the roof, or $524,000 for the roof itself, and $62,000 for soffits. That creates that $850,000 expected expenditure. Now, like we said, these numbers can be floated between. So let's say the roof project comes in at 600,000, but you're not going to need to replace gutters or downspouts at all. You can move that money. The reserves operates as one large account only for these items. So you can move those funds between the exact dollar amounts there. So in that sense, the roof was 100,000 more, but this came in $100,000 less. You can move the money like that.
I do have a question about the gutters.
Mhm.
So we had a tree limb that was dead, fall and hit our house and damaged the gutter. The gutter was replaced. It was 37 feet. Because we have a bunch of trees between our property and I'm talking, now there's 4 left. We get a lot of leaves in there and we have to have our gutters cleaned more than the twice a year that's allotted. So we actually do have other people come in and clean the gutters. I get up on the roof, I clean the gutters. Has anybody looked into the cost of gutter guards for certain homes where there's a lot of trees? Because that could save money on the cost of, if it's close to the cost of cleaning the gutters as it is to putting the gutter guards on, it may be more economical to put the gutter guards on. And when they replaced our gutter, it was 37 feet and they only put 37 feet of gutter guard on. So the other 20 feet of our gutter that connects to that does not have a gutter guard. So all the leaves are getting trapped underneath it. So is that, like, our neighbor has gutter guards and they installed the gutter guards themselves, but they don't have, when the gutters are clean, there's nothing in them.
So a couple things on that. As you mentioned, your under the charter responsibilities for your service area, there is an annual gutter cleaning. So that is taken care of and that cleans every gutter in the association. Outside of that annual cleaning, it is written into the documents that it is on the homeowner, it sounds like you're well aware of that, and that's why you're doing
Oh,
it.
they never also clean our gutters on our garage apartment and I mean, they never clean themselves at all.
We can
And
check on that within the next project to make sure that we're getting all of those clean. Adding something, typically when it comes to an association level, it's an all or nothing. So we would have to add, you'd have to add gutters to the entire association. And that would typically only be able to be funded through a surplus of cash in your operating account. Some service areas are in a situation where their operating account does have, or is extremely well funded. In that sense that they can, if there's extra funds in the operating account that aren't needed for annual operating expenses, or as a, rainy day need, then they can provide the recommendation overall from a community level or from a service area committee level that they would like to add gutter guards to the full association. Then in that case, we then go out to get a quote.
And how much
provide that to them.
does it cost for an annual cleaning of the gutters?
We are about to get those numbers back, right?
Yes.
Because the RFP is about to close. So, and that's for all 14 service areas. So those
So
get out in bulk.
When you look at the cost to put in gutter guard versus having the gutters cleaned, the gutters say last 15 years, you're looking at 15 years of not having to have your gutters cleaned because the gutter guards would be there. So that's why I'm saying it may be more economical to put gutter guards on than continue to have them cleaned.
So that's a very good point. I think there's a lot here. I don't know about the other guys. There's a problem, let's throw money at it. There's a problem, let's throw money at it, but there's no one sitting there going, are we negotiating contracts? How can we fix this? Can we fix the problems so we don't have to spend this money? We have the pressure washing done so many times, we doesn't need doing in the rain. So what's the money? You're spending money because it's in the budget and it's got to be done. It doesn't need to be done. Have the guys drive around and go, we don't need to do pressure washing. We don't need to do this. We don't need to do that. But it's I don't think there's a committee that sits there and thinks about what to do. They just follow the budget.
Some items are in there, but as it's written into the governing documents and the declaration. So in that sense, we like side or pressure washing is a good example. So there's full washing every year and then the flats and sidewalks an additional time each year, so meaning 2 total. That is inside your governing documents. If you choose not to do it, it would go against legal counsel's recommendation, as that is what your association is supposed to provide you that service for. We've had a different case where the committee recommended against one of the services provided inside by the association. And now that's causing another issue of, in that sense, if it is skipped, then it still ties you to the declaration and the bylaws on how it reads of, well, now you're in between cycles. So if a cycle was skipped by the association, meaning we're skipping both power washing this year. It means any time that there'd be a power washing citation for an individual home, they couldn't, let's say, fight back with the association and say, well, this was supposed to be done with my annual gutter or my annual power washing. Then we'd say, well, that was waived by your committee's recommendation and the board. The board has done that in the past, which now they're in a situation, actually a similar situation we're discussing now, where they're not looking at waiving any type of contractual requirements.
Have you moved the pressure washing? Because our pressure washing is done during hurricane season. Last year, they did it in September. And I think that it should be moved until after hurricane season. Just because like an example, my yard. And so we're out there with a hose because mud's all over our breezeway. It's splashed all over the side of our house. So we're out there cleaning it, and our house was just pressure washed 3 days ago.
Same.
So I mean, moving it maybe.
I've spoken to Rose many times about stuff, and she's been out to our property many times, because the contractors or whoever's coming to do these jobs aren't doing them properly, and nothing's ever done. It just, you pay for them to come and do it, they come and do it, they don't do it well, then we haven't got the budget to do it. And you're like, but these people should be responsible for what they've done, not just pay them and let them walk
It should
into
probably
the
be
distance.
more governing, I think. It seems to be very much like, oh, we do it and that's the end of it. It's not-
There needs to be more, sort of looking for more care on when it's done.
accountability of the
Well,
time.
from when it's done, because if you're pressure washing in the middle of hurricane season, knowing that your house is just.
So the fall pressure washings are the full. They're always started after the main summer months, as that's when the largest amount of mildew buildup takes place. So they're started after the summer months. They're done as a large contract with the 14 service areas, so the 14 different townhome duplex associations. And that causes, they're done like that, one for the bulk of contract power, as it makes it cheaper for each of the associations getting one contract. But the issue with that is it does mean there's an extended 2.5 month timeline from project start to project end for all 14 different service areas. So once they're starting them in September, it takes September, October, and half of November to do all 14 different associations.
Can we just mostly just start it in November? I mean, November's the end of hurricane season.
We can work with that. When we start to do that, then we start receiving complaints by homeowners of now it's affecting holiday decoration.
Yeah, that's what I'm.
Yeah.
That is what I'm.
Yeah, I see.
But if we get
We had
the
to
notice that
put
it's
that
being
in.
pressure washed on this thing.
And as Rose just noted, it did start late last year due to a hurricane pushing back the full project.
It was nuts.
Fall power washings, we have seen it's got one of those, outside of the project management, as far as the timing of it, is one of those where,
Kind of stuff.
we're in trouble if we do it now, or in trouble if we do it later.
Okay.
Lighter way of saying, of a saying.
So the bleach thing, I mean, we always ask for no bleach. You can still smell it, but because it kills our plants. But, and I'm sure the guy doesn't do it, but inside his hoses and stuff, there is bleach, because I mean, we go out there and spray everything down so that it doesn't die.
They're supposed to do the water first before they do the power wash, like they're supposed to soak the landscaping first. Because Roberto Lopez, he's the only one who did it.
Yeah.
He's the only one who soaked the landscaping first. Because what happens is that the plants will then suck up that water instead of the water with the chlorine in it. So they're supposed to drench the landscaping first before they wash the properties. And only Roberto Lopez is the only one who's done that so far.
We have to sit out
That's
there
like
and landscape ourselves.
We haven't got any. We haven't got
I mean,
any.
that's just one point in the whole.
Items, any other items of discussion?
I mean, we know you guys don't live in our townhomes. We know that, and you're going through your scenarios. But when we constantly ask for things and tell you things and say, "Hey, outside our house, like, we haven't had grass for years, and around our tree, they do a nice circle in the mud. That's what they do.
With the-
There's no
They
landscape.
go around with the
But
big.
Rose has been out, many people have been out. Have we had any communication? Zero, nothing. Charles has sent a couple of emails, but it's months and months and months without any information being given to us. And all we require is communication. If we get the communication, we're good. We know something's been done. But from my last communication about the grass, it's been 2 months, isn't it? You've probably been there and had a look, but have you told me? No, it's just, we need a little bit more communication togetherness. in it.
We used to get, and this was when CCMC was the management company, they used to send out a monthly email to the service areas individually with a calendar of what is going on, your projected dates for the work that's being done in the area. So the owners and the renters, whoever is there, knew what was going to go on, and that was sent via email. And so we just got a calendar of, hey, your townhomes are scheduled to be washed within this time frame. It can vary due to weather, but this is how many days it's going to take, but you're projected for this time. When they did the landscaping in the Muse, they would tell us, we're replacing your sod. This is the projection for when we're replacing the sod. You're going to start to see activity. So we did get those emails, so we knew what was going on. And it made it a lot easier because anything that we needed to pull inside, we could pull inside. It wasn't kind of a surprise that we see the pressure washer and then we're running to get all the cushions off our furniture so that it don't get ruined. So that's like one of the big differences. We used to get emails for the service areas.
I know we do send those for the power washing.
Well, no, if I say her face covered in power washing by opening the door, and he to put it straight in the face, because we weren't told it was being done.
We didn't get any notification.
Absolutely.
We didn't even knock on the door before,
No.
but that's bottom line.
And when Roberto Lopez did it, he's a celebration gardening and cleaning.
Yeah,
He actually went by and putting notice on every single door on what day our unit was being washed. So we all knew from the notice on our door that, hey, your unit's being washed this day. That was extremely helpful because we didn't have any information on when the pressure was occurring.
To make sure that we could provide notices with the next pressure washing.
Yes. So like 5 years ago, we were supposed to get, because I'm in between townhouses, so I'm on the end, but in the middle, and then another thing is next to me. We have this big courtyard with a tree. We have had, it's all sand and a little dirt, and so our school,
It's a problem.
you know, and they were gonna put sod down a long time ago, and then they said it was the tree, but we always have the tree, we get grass all the way to our porches.
It's an erosion problem.
The thing is that the landscapers are not removing the leaves from inside the fence. And he said, Erin is in the unit, but middle like her. And they do not, the landscapers do not come in my yard. But last week was the first time they came in my yard in 2 months. And so they don't come in, they don't remove the leaves. They haven't removed the leaves from between the houses. And I had to blow them to the street, and then I called Brian and told him we need to fix up.
And again, it's about accountability, not only for the homeowners for doing things wrong, but for the vendors, when they do things wrong, they need accountability. And we need to see that accountability. Because we do see homeowners saying, oh, my trash can was left out, I've got a violation of that. We need to see that the vendors are getting some sort of accountability for doing shoddy work.
Well, I think, Jacob, it comes down to the fact that, we're all paying extra money and we know that there's, the reserve fund has dictated a lot of where that money's going. But, landscaping is a big issue. It always is, always has been, and it doesn't seem to be getting any better. So like is it breezeway we call it between our houses? The alley, I don't know. And, it looks shocking. The back looks shocking. The front looks shocking. And obviously we've messaged Rose before now, Charles obviously as well, because we're paying all this money and nobody is coming in and beautifying the area that I don't even know what it's going to require, but for the same reason, we've got no grass out the front. Yeah, I put a mat at the bottom of my steps because people are just walking mud and I get written up for the mat. Like, go figure, yeah, people
They
can
get
have
rid of-
decorations everywhere year round, and I have a doormat and get written up, it's ridiculous.
But that, and we're told that if we do anything about it, like if we play
Yeah.
it, then you all are no
Then
longer
you're-
responsible for
Yeah.
it, and we have to continue to maintain it. I'm like, okay, well then what goes with the money for the landscaping in my little section, because I'll do whatever we want to,
Yeah,
like.
what you
But
said.
we've got guarantees for the landscaping that we're no longer getting, because we get tired of weeding. Like, we've got those
Well,
elephant tree things growing.
The ginger
everywhere.
plants everywhere. And then we said to Brian, like, you know, why are you putting down all of this mulch, right? The mulch is down this high. Why are we constantly putting this mulch down, especially for, I mean, I saw it, I've got pictures and video. 2 weeks later, they're out in the road, zhuzhing it all in together into great big
So I
sacks.
do have a
Something's more
solution
to
for
do.
that, but unfortunately it does cost money. It's called mulch. They actually. And so that would be something that should be discussed with the vendors about after they lay the mulch, put the mulch glue down. It is, water can get through it.
I think
But-
it's not allowed in
I
air.
want to do it.
Yeah.
12-inch
So
gravity.
even Brian turned around and said, yeah, it's ridiculous. It is ridiculous, but
Brian
being
does a
told
great
to do it, and he said I could use that funds for something else.
Yeah, and I
So
know
we
it's
sit all the
appropriate.
time, we raise it, and nothing's done. You're like, you're wasting money. We see you wasting money.
It's-
I mean, like, and I only said very personal. because we're all living in
No,
it.
it's- I understand.
It's not even you, it's just that frustration, you know?
The other thing is if you can't use mulch glue, can we get like going through ARP to get some type of edging put around our garden beds that would hold the mulch inside the garden beds?
The
They
committee has
have to
requested,
use out front, they put it so it's like 10 inches above ground, and it just doesn't stay there.
Was that tomorrow?
yeah, no
Well,
problem.
there's
This problem has been something that's been going on for years. I've been in Celebration now since 2005, 2006, and the same thing in that townhouse. We've been having these same problems for years upon years upon years. I've asked for the guards along the mulching. It's against the covenants or some other kind of BS.
Pharisee.
Yeah, whichever one of the many rules we have that feels that that's unsightly or whatever. I've been saying this for forever. The grass is horrible. It's been horrible. This all goes back to the landscaping vendors, and I've said this time and time again. And I know most of you unfortunately aren't here when we have these other meetings, but these are all things that have been definitely hit on time by the three of us that have been here. And it drives me absolutely insane, so much so that I was out there about a month ago raking the grass to try and see to get the mulched up leaves that were there embedded from out of the grass in the front to see if maybe we can not have mud and actually have some grass. And lo and behold, nature took its course and we now have grass growing there without any seed. But the thing that drives me absolutely insane and infuriates me more and more is that, again, to much like everyone else's complaint, is we continually spending money. The landscaping vendors, just like this beautiful list that they put together of all the great things that need to be done, it's not being maintained. If the grass was being cleaned out, we wouldn't have all the leaves. I know we have the leaves. We've had the leaves. It's a part of landscaping. And for them to say they don't rake or they don't do that, if they were there regularly and did a regular job, it would be fixed. It shouldn't take me going out there because, again, we're in a service area. I'm pretty sure most of us chose to be in this area as one of the benefits of having the lack of maintenance that we had to perform ourselves. But when we're continually paying more and more, it's, I'm Gary, I think you're there on the left in the gray shirt there. You've said it multiple times. I've seen the emails go through, and I'm sure there are other emails. I just think we're back to having the same arguments every meeting, same time. So what it comes down to is we need somebody to do their job right, plain and simple.
It's
And
never
it's
looked
like it's
worse
the-
out the front. Yeah, like the whole front area, the covenants and ARC and the look and the aesthetic, it should look great. It's never looked worse. And yet we're all paying out this extra money every month for worse service. And something needs to happen now because we can't just keep talking about it all these years on, 10 years on for you. We shouldn't still be talking about it. There needs to be an action plan about it.
Well,
And again, I can't blame the current management company for all of it either. This has been through every management company we've
Yes,
gone through. And
absolutely.
Right,
So-
2010, it seemed, I mean, I know it was Justin's lawn service. They did a great job for years, and then all of a sudden, it was just, I guess he sold the company. or whatever.
Yes, sold it, yeah.
And so that was it, and ever since it's just horrible.
You didn't want to do the work yourself.
Yeah, we were talking
I just work
about
myself.
getting dirt come in and we do it, but I don't think we can.
You're not allowed them because then
But
they.
then they don't take care of it. Then you don't.
It's crazy. You've got to put up a carrot. You can't fix it.
So there's a couple things we'll do on this as it falls to the scope of the current landscaping contract. We can review that again and review any faults that are missing in that contract, uphold the vendor.
So.
I know that a review with covenants, a walk with covenants and service area management has just taken place to review, as you mentioned, there are some areas that are under par. To see what are those items, what they are. It just as comes into the play of right now, there has been some other items like an issue of downspout and drainage, as a lot of your downspouts drain into a French drain pipe that then goes under the driveway with a pop-up on the other side, or not under the side.
Because they kept flooding, yeah.
Yeah.
And
All right, so no,
it's still doing it,
It's still
all that working and it's still doing.
But this is not like a couple of weeks.
No, this is.
It's a month down the line.
Yeah.
10 years.
Shoved my hand down there and took out leaves that were just in, like, coming down from the drain pipes. So, well, I just,
So as it comes to like a project like that, or large scale landscape projects like this, they have to come out from, again, when we address something, unless it's a repair of a one isolated repair, if we wanted to actually fix an issue, which we know there's an issue that needs to be fixed, due to the restraints of the association, we would have to review it and make the fix on every applicable issue for that service area. So if there's a drainage issue of downspout drainage and the underground pop-ups for one home, we have to evaluate it. We wouldn't just do every house. We do an evaluation of how many houses are in the same situation or near the same, and then look at that.
Can we not just get it right first? I mean, it's frustrating because all we're gonna do is you're gonna come to us and go, okay, we're out of the operating or out of this fund or that fund, we're gonna use money to resod, for example. Well, let's get it right. If we're resodding every couple of years, or every 18 months, something's wrong. Let's not waste money.
Money instead of fixing.
Yes.
It's a quick fix, but it's not an economical fix.
Dual pronged approach. First is reviewing your contract with the landscaper to make sure that if there's any current faults, that we are catching those faults to help review or to help improve the current project. At that point, if you see, and it sounds like we will be appointing a committee, sees that they're still not happy with the contracted service on there, we can always look at going out to RFP to get a different company as well on that project, or to provide your landscaping. When it comes to the larger projects of any installs needing place, I know that it sounds like there's going to be a list of items from a covenant standpoint that need fixed. There's, bare spots or so have you. Then those will come, be presented to service area management to decide how to fund that. You do have an annual allotment of a couple $1,000s in your reserves that can be used for those types of repairs. In 2025, it's $7,000. Often those types of, and you have a $2,800, or actually year to date, there's $6,000 in landscape general that's outside of the contract. So what you're paying for your full contract amount, that can be used for items like that as well.
But as a homeowner, I wouldn't want to keep spending out of the pocket to fix an issue that's not fixed.
And that's not what we're looking at
Okay.
tonight, because and also in that sense, why I bring this item up is your accounts are on the lower end of most of our service areas, which means it puts some restraint to looking at plausible solutions to projects like the
It did last year and it really.
I know, and I think one that has came up, trees in the alley, large trees in the alley, the drainage on your front or out front. Those are two main items that are notated that would like to be acted upon, but the current state of the two funds, they're not being acted upon. And it's not that, it's just because there's no funding in the operating. And right now, we're holding on any required spending in your reserves until we get through the roofing project, because we want to make sure that there's enough.
Frustrating, because we're paying all this extra money out over 18 months. I think we've seen, what is it, 150 or $200 increase?
Mhm.
And it's never looked worse. We've never had worse service. We've never been more unheard to fix things. I know you've got your reasons, but it's just frustrating for
But you're
us.
still paying more money to the contractors.
Yeah, like-
The prices are going up.
Your landscaping contracts stay flat from 2024 to 2025. That doesn't mean all the problems, I know, but I want to let you, I know, that's the difference you're seeing.
What's
being
next?
spent.
That's-
So while I only mean that to say, I know your dues have increased,
Hmm,
but the payment that you're seeing an increase has not gone to your other landscaping vendor.
Yeah.
It's, that has stayed the same amount. Almost all of your, the biggest reason of your increase has been
The
to your reserves. Which are fine with-
My next question is, once the roofs are replaced, and are the fees gonna go down or are they gonna stay where they are?
So that is why we asked Ray to be, Ray's actually not in most of our service area meetings. He's in this one and I think just one other, but that's why we asked him to be here, because this was a question that we had, and that I had along with your service area manager on, hey, what information can we provide to the service area so that way they know where they're looking like next year? Because we know, and we're gonna start budget conversations in about a month or so, but we had a sneaky feeling that with this service area and another, these conversations were gonna be prevalent at the annual meeting or Q2 meeting, which is why we brought Ray here for this, and that's why he kind of did that analysis.
Yeah,
Jacob,
yeah, so
Can I-
basically,
Oh, sorry, Carl, yes?
that's okay. Before we skip over to that real quick, do we have a number of how many non-compliance issues were sent out to the homeowners this time? How many people got nailed with their drip edge? Again,
I did all of
The dreaded drip edge.
We can look into
Edges are part of the roof.
talking with the community standards team to get that information.
okay, yeah, because again, I know this is one that stuck the last time when these came out and I nearly hit the roof because I don't know how many homeowners are maintaining their drip edge, their own, and we do have a pretty big elderly population in some of our townhomes there that are not getting up there themselves to try and do this to save some cash. And kind of back to the idea of the power washing that happens every so often, and back to the idea of things like the grass being bad, and we're not seeing anything on that, but we all get letters to say, fix your drip edge.
Yeah.
I think this is part of the homeowner. I know this is part of the homeowner frustration. I mean, they said it today, is that
And
we
we're
get
seeing-
dinged and these, and to me, it just, I look at it and I go, really, what the hell are we paying for between CROA and I mean, CROA is not that bad. But this maintenance fee, exactly what it's called, is a maintenance fee. Back to that idea of these things just falling upon the homeowners when and again, I know too that this was a huge increase due to the roof, but again, every year is an increase. I mean, we tracked it that last meeting and I think it was $50 the previous year, $100 this year. Before that, I think it was another like 25 or something like that, which again isn't terrible, but now you've gone up almost $200 in 2 or 3 years. And as many folks have said, and I'm sure you guys get emails beyond that, we continue on a downward spiral versus a upward trend.
Yeah,
So-
so I'll let Ray speak a little bit on that, as it does look a bit optimistic for next year. Regarding the violation notice, I know we mentioned this in the Q1 meeting. Due to a change in the service metric requirements set by the board entering the new management contract with Grand Manors starting 2025, that was a mouthful. There has been a change on inspections. So previously, while our community standards inspectors were doing their rounds of inspections, the way they were doing them did allow a little more lenience on the amount of inspections homeowners in townhomes were seeing. The rate that the contract is written starting in 2025 requires a full inspection, top to bottom, 4 times a year per door, including townhome doors. So we are seeing a lot more inspections by the community standards team that on some level of purpose do not communicate directly with the service area management, as they're working just based on the CROA covenants guidelines. They try to, if there's any large violations that they're seeing frequent, I think one of that has been notated as being pressure washing, that before sending out those pressure washing notifications, they speak with the service area management team. Because if they know that if there's something already scheduled, let's say like we know that service areas have the fall pressure washing and it's within a month out, then they know not to send out that violation on pressure washing, because there's already a plan in action to solve that, taken care of by the association. However, I bring that up in that sense that we are seeing a lot more compliance notices being sent out that are in between cycles, which means it is on the homeowner, which does bring frustrations to the homeowner. But those are due to a contract requirement provided by.
So my question on that, if the guy comes around my house and he has a look around and says, all the drip edges are terrible and there's a mat in front of the door. Does he also turn around and go, okay, well, the responsibility is that we should have sod here, and that shouldn't be this way. They should be looking not only at me, but as the jobs that are being done by you guys for my property and telling you.
So I saw
they
the
need-
guy, I saw the guy that was doing this, and I said to him, what is it we're doing? And he was doing, I think, this, what you were saying, the top to bottom. And I said, okay, well, I said, well, did you take a picture of their grass that's not there? And he's like, no, so we took a picture of it. So it does feel very, you know.
It's very one select. That's how it feels.
That's fair. The landscaping overall was done at a department manager level with Rose, I think just last week. So basically, an inspection for your landscaping as an overall for the association instead of by owner, as it can't be assigned by owner, has been done by covenants, from a covenants point of view that, like I said, they kind of they kind of act in a different silo than community standards, as they shouldn't be basing those, they should treat every home equal, like you're trying to mention. So they do that in that sense, and that is, a write-up is being made right now.
And is it just Rose and Co from the department that walk around it, or do you walk around with professional gardeners that know what to look for and, you know, that?
And follow up on work done, because there's been a few cases on our properties where work has been done, it's been done terribly, they've had to come back and redo it because nobody comes out and checks. They just go and do that, done, brilliant, next. And I know you're all busy, I know you've got a load, and we're not the only town that's, you've got thousands of these people you speak to, but you need to have people to check the money you're spending
Yeah.
and not say it's all right, the homeowners have paid for it. And it's like negotiations with contractors, you've got to do that, you've got to check the
They need
work.
accountability.
Because all we see is terrible
You know,
work.
and I think that's the key thing here, is they need to be accountable for their lack of action.
That's just my.
So when they went around and did the landscaping, and they were looking at that, did they note tree roots? Because the tree roots are growing into our house, they're growing into the neighbor's house, and they've destroyed 3 driveways.
Yeah.
They're lifting a transformer at the end of our alley.
This is notating just covenants violation. That inspection is specific to.
Well, the driveway we're responsible for, but we can't fix the driveway because the tree is sitting over a foot, the root ball of the tree is over a foot above ground level. So we can't fix the driveway until the tree is taken out. And, you know, that's one of the problems that we're running into, both the neighbors and I, because we can't fix the driveway. That's on us.
Yeah. And that would require any of that situation to be addressed as whole in the association. We could do that today. It would require a special assessment to make that happen.
Well, I'm just saying, like,
So
the stuff, when you go through with the landscaping company and you do the walkthrough on this stuff that needs to be done, is this stuff being noted? Say like, it's gonna cost X amount of dollars to remove a tree. We can't afford it this year. Let's put it in our 1 to 2 year plan to remove this tree. So, you know, it's not, you don't have to do that special assessment, like it's being.
The
for the
ideas with
future.
those would come out of that landscaping line from your reserves. So you would have some funding in there that could do that. Right now, all of those funds are being recommended not to be spent. to make sure.
I understand, but I'm saying like, is it in a plan for like a year or 2 years? Like you see that issue and say, hey, we need to remove this tree. Let's put it in a 1-2 year plan.
Individual with a quote on those items, no, because it has been brought up by Rose and team to look at, can we start getting quotes for these projects? The answer has been no, because we're not gonna start quoting these projects if we know we are not gonna be funding the project.
There's absolutely no piecemeal kind of maintenance plan that can be instituted, so it's all or none, right? The entire town or not.
Or the entire service area or not. On some items, yes. If it's addressing an issue that that one homeowner is having and needs to be evaluated so is this a common association problem? If it is a common association problem, we need to fix the same problem for the full association. That may not mean that every house has a driveway issue, or some may not have a tree. But if we're treating one person's driveway tree issue, then we have to address every homeowner's driveway tree issue in your service.
But I'd like it that you guys know about these issues without us raising it, because you can turn around and say, well, next door they've had a bollard outside the front of the house. Very trivial, very trivial. If you knew about these trees and you knew about these homes, and we ring you up and go, hey, yes, we know. And one has gone out and has noted it, and we're putting it in there. We feel better. We know that you've got your eyes on the property and not, looking away.
Understand that. While we have only got 5 minutes left, I do want to get into that the part about what your budget's going to look like on a very high level of your concern of, are we going to keep seeing an increases? When it falls just to the reserve amounts, because we did a substantial increase from 2024 to 2025 on reserve contribution, it's looking, like I said, in a more positive manner for next year. As your contribution this year was just short of $150,000 is what your association is putting into your reserve fund in 2025.
Yeah, so if the question is, our dues are gonna continue increasing due to reserves, it's a bit complicated because everything goes hand by hand, right? So we can leave the reserve allocations flat with what we have in 2025, and your dues can still increase if we're not responsible with the spending on the day-to-day operating side. So, and the reverse goes the same way. Like, we might increase the reserve allocation, but if we don't increase the operating costs that we have on a daily day, your dues are gonna go up as well. So currently for 2025, we were underfunding the reserve account based on the reserve study recommendation. And for 2026, what we're doing is trying to up that recommendation to see if we're able to cut up to what they're suggesting for us to have in the cash account. So currently, we don't have a percentage of what's going to be or a number or a percentage if there's going to be an increase or a decrease for your dues for 2026. But currently, we don't need, let's say for 2026, the reserve allocation number is going to be 125, which is slightly lower from what you're allocating for 2025 and slightly over what the recommendation is from the reserve study. I'm putting here for 2027 $150,000, but it's way too early for me to know if we actually need these $150,000, because even if we put a lower number here, we're going to have enough money for 2028 to cover the payment product that we have here, which is going to be $354,000. Because if you see here, if we allocate $125,000 in 2026, $150,000 in 2027, and $150,000 in 2028, we're going to end up with a cash surplus of $55,000. I can lower $55,000. Let's say just leave 125, 125, and 125. That's going to reduce these $5,000. And at the end of the 2028 year, instead of us having $55,000 in cash remaining, we're going to have zero. And we're still going to be able to cover all of these expenses, but we don't want to get to that extreme point that we basically drain 100% of the cash account. And then we're going to basically start from scratch in 2029, where based on the reserve study, we should have a cash balance of $100,000 at least at the beginning of 2029. So it's just about having that balance of being responsible with our operating and spending, because one, we need to lower those costs in order for us to be able to have enough cash to transfer that cash from the operating to the reserve account so that we can still meet these requirements, but at the same time, making sure that we're trying to cut up with the recommendation of the reserve study. If we don't need to get to what the reserve study is recommending, then we have a little bit more flexibility with what amount of cash we're going to be recommending to you guys to transfer from one account to another. But currently, I will say that we don't necessarily need to increase the reserve allocation from 2026 to 2027 because we might end up with enough cash to cover all the projects that we have for the coming years. But then at the end, once we complete all of those projects, the account might be 100% drained. That's no issue. Yeah.
Ray's example just went into a long-term projection. When I look at it more as a, what does it mean from 2025 to 2026? Again, we're very early in the service area budget exercise, but from the very early presentation of it, the number that that's being played with for your reserve contribution is around 125,000. Your 2025 budgeted number was around 150,000.
Which you're not gonna meet.
And that's
This is the note that I made earlier. We are allocating 150,000, but that doesn't mean that we're necessarily transferring $153,000 cash from one account to another because we don't always have the required to complete that transfer. From out of the 153,000, which is already under the recommendation, we're gonna be actually allocating even a lower number. And if we end up allocating just $126,000 in actual cash, that's basically, we're gonna be staying flat if I leave for 2026 that we're gonna be allocating 125, because assuming that we're gonna move 100% of that cash, is basically we allocated 126 in 2025, and we're gonna be allocating 125, assuming that we're able to transfer 100% of that.
So it's looking like there's a bit to play with. A $25,000 that may not be needed to be funded in your reserve, which means that difference, as we know, the operating fund does typically see a CPI level increase on most of its lines, is going to have a small increase in your operating fund, just without even looking at the numbers. We know it'll probably be increasing by a CPI level amount. Your operating is probably going to be written at a conservative level because it has no funding in it, that there's no room to write it at a progressive or at an amount that if we don't hit that amount, there's extra funds that we can eat from. It needs to be a very well-written, conservatively written operating fund. But that being said, there is still $25,000 that can go into that operating fund to help eat any of those increases that we may be seeing in your operating account. That's a lot to say. I don't expect. Oh, go ahead.
If I may, the risk with just having this tunnel vision of what's gonna happen with our assessment from 2025 to 2026 is that, yeah, maybe decreasing this number that we're estimating right now for 2026 of $125,000, it might help you guys on the short term. But then if we don't look a little bit further and we actually need to do these projects, you guys might be looking at a special assessment. So you might get a relief right now of not having to put this cash up front, but then maybe we'll need to have like a tougher conversation saying, hey, we don't have enough money to cover most of these projects. And some of them, we might be able to push them further into the future, but some are gonna be needed to be completed this year. And we don't have the money, so we'll need to put it as a special assessment. That's
But if it's the same, surely we have a roof replacement, obviously we know that's part of the reason for the increase, and then 2 years later, I think you said we're in a painting assessment, but if we're paying the same, for example, without a great big roof expenditure, over that 10-year period before the next roof expenditure is due, does it not negate the fact for an increase because we are paying the same amount, if you like? I know that's not necessarily possible, but in the end, I can't see a shortfall if we're over-egging it right now for a roof replacement, then won't be needed for another 10 years. Yes, we'll have some small projects like painting,
Yeah,
but surely that just
yeah.
works itself out.
Yes, exactly, which is why we also need to take into consideration the day-to-day operation. Just making sure that we're responsible with that spending, because yeah, we have the agreement with landscaping for the monthly contract maintenance service that they provide to us, but then we're also spending on emergency stuff, which is what your guys are talking about, the vendors are not having accountability of the work that they're putting in. So if everybody's working as it should be, that the vendors are doing the correct job, that we're not having to end up calling them to come like an additional one or twice a month, and that's gonna be additional costs that we pay on top of the monthly fee that we're already paying them, then that's gonna lower your day-to-day operation costs. And it's gonna help us just like be able to increase the reserve allocation without increasing your operating side as well. And then your dues might be able to stay flat. But that's why everything goes hand by hand. Like if we don't have an action operator, I'm sorry, go ahead.
Sorry, guys. Yeah, but exactly that scenario you just said is the problem.
Yes.
The vendor isn't doing their job. They have to come back out and then we have to pay again. We shouldn't be having to pay when they have to come back out if they didn't do the job correctly the first time. So this goes back to that same exact thing of the fiscal responsibility being put back on the homeowners. I mean, I don't know. I'm again, this is the 80 million.
If you use this year as an example, you're operating outside of roof, outside of about $5,000 so far of unexpected roof repairs. Everything else is holding accountable and not running. But the concerns of roof repair are part of the issue of what is being said here on. If we do act accordingly to the reserves, it will lower the spending and operating, as we won't need to be spending on track of $10,000 this year on roof repairs because we're following the reserves appropriately, which is saving us $10,000 of unexpected repair costs.
Well, the reality, especially in our service area and most of these service areas, is the roof repairs are a problem due to the shoddy job. If the job would have been done, and again, this isn't on you guys because this was the prior company, but we wouldn't even be having this discussion because the roofs would have been done properly and we would have been having minor repairs, if anything. And I mean, again, these are all hypotheticals and what would have happened if this and that and the other thing. But if we were to leave everything the way it was this year, in regards to our fees, I would expect not to see an increase. We would just stand pat at the $600 a month or whatever that is, correct?
There's a possibility of that as we're at this point early in the budgeting process, yes.
And then that would be then for 2026, we're putting in 150 versus the 125 again, because we're duplicating what we did this year for next year.
That would be
which should then help with the shortfall and
running flat would be doing $125,000 contribution this year. You're probably going to see that 25,000 needed in your operating. So you're going to run flat next year. It's looking at, again, early numbers is that you're needing 150,000 in your as a contribution to reserve. How do you get the extra $25,000 would be out of a dues increase?
Yeah, and just because we're running a deficit for 2025, where we're budgeting for 153,000 allocation from operating to reserve, and we might end up just allocating 126,000 at the end of the year. When the auditors are coming in and reviewing our books, they're gonna say, hey, you had in the budget 153,000, you only transfer 126,000, you owe from the operating, you owe the reserve fund the remaining balance. And that's gonna go into an interfund account. It's gonna be telling us, hey guys, like you owe this amount to a reserve fund. So at some point in time, we need to cover that deficit and just like actually transferring that money that is owed to the reserve fund. So just because we might end up just allocating 126,000 in 2025, and we're saying that we're going to be allocating $125,000 in 2026, doesn't mean that we don't need to go back and allocate that difference that we're going to be carrying from 2025.
Which is currently at 102,000, and it looks, which is in your interfund account as money that has not been paid into your reserves as it was anticipated to be paid.
Yeah, and this is like a balance that has been carrying up. I've only been here for 2 months. I haven't gone back that much yet, but I'm assuming that this is coming from years that we haven't been able to transfer that money yet.
Yes. That's also why you're seeing the contribution level to your reserves being increased so much, is because you're short 1,000 because it hasn't been paid in the past, because there hasn't been operating funds to provide that transfer.
I don't want to harp on about this, but does anyone actually go in and negotiate with the contract?
I was about to say, who does the negotiations?
I've-
You've got a lot of
I don't know
power.
whether you just, because you've got so many, just let them go. How much? Fine, that's great. Does anybody sitting down say, get more people in there, get the prices down.
Yeah, I mean, who?
They
who's
do,
doing
and that's
that?
also why all large projects over $10,000 require at least 3 bids. So we can at least see, so, and those bids help us provide that we're not doing a shot in the dark when it comes to pricing. We're
When
not-
you find this pretty big,
It's open bids.
Oh, as
So
far as.
because the industry I work in, what I see is that when large corporations bring in vendors to bid, they bring them in, they lay out what it is that they want, they give them the opportunity to take a scope of what it is, look at the property, they turn around, they write their proposal, then they all come back in the same room together and they openly bid against each other. In the room, all the vendors bidding against each other. And so from there, they have to explain why this cost is higher than this cost, why is your supply cost more? Because all the vendors charge O and P. So whatever they buy from the suppliers, they're upcharging it in order to make more profit on. And so when large corporations bring in vendors, they actually have a room full of them with their proposals and they sit there actively bidding against each other in an open bid. It's like an auction.
And we are in celebration, so people do go, oh, celebration,
Yeah.
we'll uplift that.
There's a
stuff.
20%
So
upcharge
it means-
on labor and
so
stuff.
And can I jump in here from a,
Negotiation.
So it's done in that, it's currently done in that process. We bring the bids in, they're often reviewed by the committees and for those apples and orange comparisons, go back to the vendors. We go back to the
So
vendors,
we just do it all by,
Bidding
yeah,
against each other in the same.
we don't
not in
put,
the same room.
so did that could change,
Can I-
is there something that said you can't?
Charles?
Yeah,
sorry,
I was
I'll
just,
go, I'll go after that.
no, that was
All right.
okay, Charles. I was raising up the flag for you because I heard you. I wanted you to get in there.
Oh, thanks. No, so I just want to jump in and add something here. And I'm not going to say I'm speaking out of turn because I think it's my prerogative. But what I would say is, and I think I think it was Debbie, the person who said that the proposals, 100% agree, right? It's competitive bidding, proposals are presented, all that. The committee or future committee reserves the right to do best and final offers. So it is certainly within your right if you want to go back to Grand Manners as the committee and say, we want, these 1 and 2 are our top whatever. And then if you want them to go back and sharpen their pencils, 100%. Now, if that's something where you're not getting that from management or you want more proactivity around that, we can certainly discuss that. But there's nothing that precludes you from saying that we shouldn't have a best and final offer process. And I think, Gary, that's maybe what you were saying.
And in that example, that is what we do, Charles. We do need to conclude this meeting as we do have another service area meeting about to start up and we've gone over time. Is there any final items that need addressed? No? All right, it is 11:41 and we will conclude the Q2 South Village Townhome Service Area meeting. Thank you all for your
Thank you.
participation.
Thank you.
This is more than we had a few of these, so I do appreciate it.
Thank you, guys.
Thank you.